I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is a case that has TikTokers talking about one of their own. Sarah Patrick was very public on social media. Then her mother and stepfather were shot and killed inside their home. What happened next is what has everyone talking. Here's the story. Sarah Patrick, just 16 years old when the unthinkable occurred, now stands at the center of a chilling mystery. On a February morning, her 5-year-old sister discovered the bodies of Kristin and James Brock, both shot in their bed. Sarah placed the 911 call and publicly mourned online, posting tearful TikToks and delivering a haunting eulogy that ended with the words, "I'm sorry." But investigators say a mountain of physical and digital evidence paints a darker picture. Sarah is charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault and will be tried as an adult. Her social media activity, including outreach to true crime TikTok influencers, suggesting sensational attention to the case, has deepened suspicions. With no motive yet revealed, the community reels, and the tragedy leaves the haunting question: who was this girl behind the eulogy? This story, she's 16 years old. She's at home, mom, stepdad, her parents, sleeping in her bed, and her little sister. And the parents are shot and killed. Middle of the night. That's what the story is, and are found by the little sister. And it's Sarah Patrick who calls 911. Now, a big part of this story is what has transpired in social media, and it's really because of what the defendant, Sarah Patrick, has done on social media. She had a presence before any of this happened, but then afterwards, she started posting things, and a lot of people were noticing them and talking about them. Let's take a look at some of those post-murder postings that were done. This was one of her. Please send prayers for healing, for a break from everything. I'm so tired. I should probably delete it later. And you can see her crying there. She doesn't talk in any of these. There's music. Sometimes she mouths along, and sometimes it's just a picture of her. Here she writes, "Life's hard, but at least I have my mom." The next one, "It hasn't hit yet that they're actually gone yet." And think about this, if someone is posting this stuff, it's gonna garner a reaction. You're gonna feel bad for this young girl. She's lost her parents. What's going on? You were in the house. How did this horror take place? Let's take a look at the next one. "I know how it feels to have people saying the worst lies about you at your worst." So now she's reacting to the reactions to her as well. So there seems to be, she's really tied into what is happening on social media, not just posting, but reading what people are saying about her posts. And I get it, everyone does that, but this is in a moment where she's grieving this horrific loss. Here's another caption from another TikTok. "I'll never forget her last time speaking to me. She came into my room when I was in bed watching a show, and she told me good night in a deep voice, acting silly. I should have hugged her." Now, going on social media, I mean, people do it. We all do it. Maybe not all of us, but like I do for sure. And everyone has a different approach to social media, right? Some, you know, if you're a teenager, it's because everyone's doing it. Some people do it to try to make money. Some people do it because they're very opinionated. Some people may do it for to try to get their feelings out there and get something back from the social media community. So all of this brings us to the first question in our investigation, and it's all about the defendant and social media. after the murder. Why would Sarah Patrick go on social media? What's her purpose here? What's going on? Here to help answer that question is retired police detective Dr. Mike McCutcheon. He's also a crime scene forensics instructor at Forensic Education. And Dr. Janie Lacey, psychotherapist and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions. Dr. Janie Lacey, I'll begin with you, right? There's a lot going on here, and there's two ways to look at it, right? We can look at this like she had nothing to do with the murders of her parents, or she's responsible, like prosecutors say she is, for the murders of her parents. From those two different perspectives, how do you see this question of why she would go on social media?
Well, I agree with you, Vinny. From my perspective, there are several possible explanations for her extensive social media activity, especially following her parents' death, right? But I would see actually three of, I would say, primary motivations that could really be at play here, right? One, you mentioned first, if she truly is innocent, as she claims, this could represent a genuine grief and a desperate need for support and validation during her trauma, because we do know that teenagers and young adults can often use social media as their primary need for emotional expression. But then we also know that there are some people who commit crimes. They experience this psychological thrill, if you want to call it that, from fooling others and inserting themselves into investigation. And by reaching out, in this case, to true crime creators and posting emotional videos, she may have been seeking attention and control over the narrative, would be my second. And then lastly, I would say that, potentially this could be an attempt at creating an alibi through public displays of grief by establishing herself as this grieving daughter online. And she may have believed this would deflect suspicion. So the fact that this specifically was told TikTokers could provide intel, but nothing that would break the case, I believe, is what was said. Suggest a calculated approach to managing this information. So that's my thoughts, Vinny.
Okay. Dr. Mike McCutcheon, I want to put another twist into this. So she's posting on social media, but Cody Thomas spoke to a TikToker who has a feed or a show called Allegedly Reportedly. A true crime TikToker is contacted by Sarah Patrick. Take a listen.
I had not heard of this case until Sarah Grace messaged me on June 3rd asking me to cover the Brock case. She went on to explain it was the unsolved case of her parents' murder, her mother, Kristin, and stepfather, James, and it needed a light shined on it. I told her I would certainly look into it. I didn't have much of a reaction yet because I get requests like that all the time. So nothing suspicious. I just felt bad for her and I was very nice to her, which looking back on it is just very strange. But then I told her if she wanted any specific photos included, she could email those to me. So at that point, she emailed me photos and her version of what happened that night. Now, once I read that, there were a few things that I thought a little bit about, but then I said, no, have compassion. She just lost her parents. This is a child. But when I read that email to my husband, he, not that he's not compassionate, but he immediately said, she did it. And he had his reasons. And I was like, oh my gosh, but she just lost her parents. How could you think that? Turns out his reasons I should have seen in the beginning. But hindsight is something different. Her talking about, you'll get a lot of views if you cover this story. That was very strange. I should have thought more about that. And then in her email to me, which I haven't talked about publicly yet, but I will tell you, she told me she did not hear anything that night. Now, I am hearing other versions of that story that she told other people, but I will say that was one of the things my husband picked up on. How would you not have heard anything?
All right, Dr. Mike McCutcheon, I've given you a lot to go through here. What are your thoughts about her posting and then reaching out to a true crime TikToker here?
It depends on what side you're looking at. Dr. Lacey just had mentioned whether you think that she's innocent or guilty. This is nothing new. It's just a different medium. Scott Peterson went on national news and said, I need help finding my wife, Lacey, and he was convicted of her murder. Going all the way back to 1983, when Diane Downs did the same thing, and over. There was Mark Castellanos, I think was his name, went on a daytime talk show and talked about looking for his wife that he had killed. It's nothing new. Unfortunately, it's a new media to reach, and it is to get that attention. I want that attention. And if I'm asking for help to find the killer, then you're not looking at me. It's an attempt to try to deflect the attention from me if I'm on TV or on TikTok saying, please, somebody help me. So now you're not looking at me because I'm here trying to find the killer. I mean, OJ did the same.
Yeah, yeah, OJ did. Dr. Janie Lacey, we have about 20 seconds here. If prosecutors are correct here that she is responsible, this social media connection, could it in any way be connected to the motivation behind the murders?
Well, there's always a possibility. So as we're finding out more of the case, especially looking at her social media usage before, right? Because what I find most telling is the timing, right? She began posting just, I believe, 9 days after the death and continued for months, even commenting on speculation about the killer. So this probably is going to be a key piece as far as her usage and how she was using it that can give us some insight to her thought process and her mental construct, especially before the murders occurred.
All right, guests are going to stay with us. We have a lot more to get through in this story. Coming up, what does Sarah Patrick's eulogy reveal?
They had their disagreements, just like any teenage daughter would have with a mother. But Sarah was a good kid.
A woman's remains found scattered throughout a 3-mile area.
Now, a former naval officer stands trial accused of killing his wife.
The dismembered wife murder trial. Live coverage weekdays, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law.
Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
The matriarch mastermind murder trial, August 19th, only on Court TV.
There was nothing, DJ, her father, he's a good person, and he and Kristin got along very well. They had their disagreements, but they had been divorced for so long that they got along quite well, and they were cooperative, and Sarah would go visit him at times. They had their disagreements, just like any teenage daughter would have with a mother. But Sarah was a good kid. I mean, she really was.
That's Sarah Patrick's grandfather, who spoke with Cody Thomas and had nothing but really nice things to say about his granddaughter. It was his daughter who was shot and killed. So there he is, and supporting his granddaughter. She called him just before Cody did the interview, so has continued that contact with her. Now, months before her arrest, Sarah Patrick delivered a tearful eulogy at the funeral of her mother and stepfather. The video was posted on Facebook by family relative Kristin Brock.
I just wanted to say goodbye to my mama and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here. I didn't have a single clue how much I needed y'all until now. Although there's nothing we can do to bring them back, we still have control over how we treat people with us today. I love you guys, and so do I. And so do they. I'm sorry.
And that was the end. You think about where this ended up, right? She didn't get arrested right away. This was a pretty long investigation. And so she's there and she's delivering the eulogy, and now she's been charged with the murders. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. What does Sarah Patrick's eulogy reveal here? What can we take away from that? Still here to help with our investigation is Dr. Mike McCutcheon, and joining us, trial attorney, former police lieutenant Rick King. Rick, I want to do this. I want to play the end of the clip of the eulogy. And again, this video posted on Facebook by Kristin Brock, a family relative from the stepfather's side. Let's take a listen just to the end.
I love you guys, and so do I. And so do they. I'm sorry.
Her last two words there, Rick, I'm sorry. Should we read anything into that?
On some level, I want to. I feel like you should. But then when I really think about it, when you're given those types of mournful and sad types of speeches, sometimes you say you're sorry because you can't hold together, because you're falling apart. And when I look at her and I watch her, as the end of this, as this speech comes to a close, she seems to be having, she's holding back tears and she's fighting it back. And so I think maybe in this case, it might just be, listen, I'm sorry. I'm falling apart here, and I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm sorry for this.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, what are you seeing in this eulogy?
I got to agree with Rick on this one. It's not enough in my mind to say, if you read it on paper, oh, she said she apologized during the eulogy. I think that's out of context. Now, it could be. I was more concerned about in there when she says, I just wanted to say goodbye to my mama and James. And then she changes from I to we never got a chance to. That was more curious to me than her saying, I'm sorry at the end. She's not speaking clearly. She's flustered, and she may be just apologizing of, I'm sorry, I can't do this. This is too much. The I'm sorry is less important to me than when she changes from I just wanted to say, and then she said, we never got the chance to say goodbye. And I'd be curious of why she changed from I'm going to tell you what I want to now it's a we. I want to know who the other person is that she's referring to, or people.
Rick, this is a 16-year-old. Her parents have been murdered. The investigation took some time. We've heard about a mountain of evidence, but we haven't seen or heard the evidence itself, right? It has not been revealed publicly. What are your thoughts here about how sure and how compelling the evidence must be to go forward with arresting the 16-year-old daughter of murdered parents?
So, Vinnie, I am, as the retired police officer side of me says that if they've arrested her, then they must have had probable cause to do so, which, as we all know, is a very low threshold. The criminal defense attorney in me is like, they're not talking about any evidence, and they're not talking about finding the murder weapon, and they're not talking about anything. And so I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical right now. I just want to see exactly, I want to know what they have. Well, if you got something, let's take a look, because we're holding a child. It's a child we're holding in jail right now, and we're treating her as an adult. And if we're going to do so, then at least let some of us know, hey, what's going on?
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, if this was a murder committed, again, by a child, 16 years old, would you expect to be able to put together evidence from that crime scene? Do you think a 16-year-old would be able to commit a crime like this and not leave incriminating evidence behind?
No, I don't. I think that the ability even for, I'll say, professional criminals to not leave evidence behind is very difficult to not do that. And as I said previously, we also have the digital aspect where everything is recorded. Anytime there's a movement, your phone is recorded. Everything is digitally recorded with our phones. And then in the crime scene itself, if you're trying to stage a crime scene or plant evidence or make it look like a robbery or burglary or something like that. That's very difficult to do for especially a young person who doesn't have the knowledge of it, to fool a seasoned investigator. And as you said, there's a 16-year-old, and I'll disagree with Rick just a little bit on that of, I know I wouldn't want this tried in public, and as the investigator, I'd say we are not sharing any evidence. Now, I want to know, as me, I want to know, but I would be really skeptical at this point. But I think if they're going forward and arresting a 16-year-old and keeping her in locked up, that they must have something to say. This is more than just we just hit that probable cause threshold. I think they must have something pretty severe if they're going to have enough to arrest a 16-year-old and keep her in jail.
Yeah, Rick, my guess is maybe the evidence would be digital in a certain respect, on the phone, movements. Is she up all night? This supposedly happened in the middle of the night. She could be up all night. She could be on her phone. She could be, downloading or watching or communicating with someone else. But yet they did not arrest her for months afterwards.
And that's my problem with the case. If this is a 16-year-old who, and as Mike just said moments ago, it's difficult enough for a grown person to try to figure out how to stage a crime scene or make it clean enough so that law enforcement doesn't, come on to you. She's 16 years old. So the only thing that makes sense to me is it's communications after the event. Something has happened that they're able to lock onto now, because otherwise it doesn't make sense, because if she's 16 and she does this by herself, then it takes 5 months to arrest her. It doesn't make much sense to me. What makes sense to me is that what happens afterwards now gives them something that they can hold on to, something that puts her there or links her to someone else.
All right, Rick's going to stick around. Dr. Mike McCutcheon, great to have you on the program tonight. Thank you so much. Up next, what is Sarah Patrick's family saying about these murder charges? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the teenage girl from Georgia on social media who is now accused of shooting her parents while they slept and then posting about the tragedy. Here's the story. Sarah Patrick, a grief-stricken teenager once known for her tearful TikToks, has become the face of an alleged chilling betrayal. On February 20th, 2025, her 5-year-old half-sister found her mother, Kristin Brock, and stepfather, James Brock, shot dead in their Carrollton, Georgia home. Sarah called 911, but the tears unspooled across social media soon drew suspicion. Prosecutors now say a mountain of physical and digital evidence, including her haunting funeral eulogy and strategic TikTok outreach, paints a darker picture. In the weeks after the tragedy, she messaged true crime influencers insisting the case would be, quote, a really big hit. With no motive yet established, law enforcement remains tight-lipped as they prepare to try her as an adult, charged with 2 counts of murder and aggravated assault. A twist that turned a grieving daughter into a suspect and a community's sorrow into suspicion. So, Sarah Patrick, I mean, this was a family. It was a blended family. Her parents were split, but each of them had married, and they seemed to get along pretty well. And there's brothers, there's sisters, there's stepbrothers and stepsisters. I mean, this is a family, and it seems like everything is pretty normal, right? There's not outrageous behavior that's alleged anywhere along any of this. Like, it seems pretty normal. Now, Cody Thomas went and spoke with Sarah's grandfather, who is also the father of Sarah's mother, right? So he's the grandfather on the maternal side. And It's interesting when you talk to him about Sarah, because it's his daughter whose life was taken, and it's his granddaughter who's accused. So what he thinks about the situation is pretty insightful, potentially insightful, about the family dynamics. Take a listen.
What are the feelings? What are the emotions? And I understand that you're standing by her side. You believe she's innocent.
Oh, I'm just in total shock. Because she, first of all, the length of time that's passed and the fact that they arrested her without any evidence that I know of. Everything seems circumstantial, and I think they were just desperate to arrest someone and to try and, because the case was open for months. A lot of investigation. I know they tried hard to find the murder weapon. They tried hard to find who was involved. They investigated a lot of people. And for them to charge Sarah without, and I'll say this, the investigator told me the day they issued the warrant, when I asked him, I said, well, what proof why did you pick on Sarah? He said, well, she's the only one who could have done it. And that's a quote. But that's, to me, that's not enough proof to throw a 17-year-old girl in jail. And you take a 100-pound girl and you hand her a 9mm pistol and you ask her to fire it, who doesn't have a lot of, I don't know if Sarah had ever shot a gun before. She was here, and whenever we shot guns, they were rifles. I never saw her shoot a pistol. But I just can't imagine, the accuracy that gun had in her hands. I don't think it could happen.
So Grandpa's not holding back, right? He's telling you exactly his thoughts on all of this. Extremely skeptical. But there's other family members who are speaking. That brings us to the next question in our investigation. What is Sarah Patrick's family saying about the murder charges? We heard from Grandpa. Let's get some more insight. Here to help us answer that question, psychotherapist, CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey, and retired Nassau County Lieutenant Mike Gould. Mike, great to see you. Thanks for joining us as well. Mike, first, I just want to get your reaction to what he said in quoting what he was told at the time the warrant is issued for the arrest of his granddaughter. She's the only one that could have done it. That can't be the conclusion, right? That of the evidence, meaning like, well, we don't have evidence that she did it, but she's the only one who could have done it. There would have to be more, wouldn't there? Arguably?
Yeah, Vinny. This is baffling, this case, the duration of the time to the arrest, and then the amount of time she's incarcerated. I'll be honest with you, in lack of any other spokesperson for the defense, the grandfather sounded like a defense attorney. He was articulate, and he's asking very compelling questions. Regardless of the guilt or innocence, these are things that have to be explored. So when I think about this and what we have now, these circumstantial, did she cry? She said she was sorry. I can't tell you the number of times that I saw grieving or being at eulogies of grieving parents, and they sometimes were laughing. So I don't think we should use this as a metric to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So I think there's a lot that the law enforcement is withholding. I don't know why. They're not giving their theory. But there's not an alternate theory either. So the grandfather's as good as anyone else so far in this case, his opinion.
Absolutely. Now, Sarah Patrick's father, right? Daniel Patrick spoke with Newsweek about the charges, and he responded to the backlash that she's getting on social media. Let's take a listen.
I know 100% in my heart that Sarah's innocent. She's a typical 17-year-old that, lived like a teenager, and she would never do this. As a father, this has been one of the most hurtful things in my life. I'm sorry, but it's just hard,
Okay, Dr. Janie Lacey, what are your thoughts so far about what we're hearing from Grandpa and from her dad?
Well, as we're hearing, the family's response has been notably divided, but predominantly supportive. And when I'm listening to Grandpa and her biological father, they really seem real strong about her innocence. And to me, that would be whatever their relationship and their bond and what they knew of her before, that they truly believe that she is innocent. And, I find it also particularly significant in Dennis's, the grandpa's, one of his interviews where he mentioned about the stepdad's criminal history may have played a part in his death, suggesting that the family may believe someone from his past was responsible. So these narratives are what we call cognitive dissonance. So they're going to have to line up a narrative or a story that goes along with them believing that Sarah was innocent. So their heartfelt interviews tells me that they really believe that.
Now, WJCL in Savannah spoke with Kristin Brock, a family member, I believe, from the stepfather's side, who said she had suspicions about Sarah Patrick.
Obviously, we were glad that, someone was finally being held accountable for this. And we, of course, had our suspicions. So it wasn't that shocking. Nothing that raised an alarm to me, just a typical teenage girl. But Jamie had told us multiple times that Sarah was not who we thought she was. You don't see what I see. You don't live in the home with her.
Yeah, Michael, that might be, and that's going to be difficult perhaps to ascertain what was going on in the dynamic between Sarah and her mom, Sarah and her stepfather, because mom and stepdad are gone. So they're not here to tell their story. How do investigators try to figure out if there was some sort of dynamic inside the household if the parents from the household are gone?
Yeah, Vinny, sure. So I think digital, texting, there's got to be much more here. As I said earlier, law enforcement is obviously withholding information. Sometimes that's a very good thing. I don't know at this point why. But text message, friendships, but what we have now is suspicion. Suspicion is a far cry from probable cause. So again, I'm baffled by the fact that I know that this police spokesperson came out. She seemed very confident. She said there's pretty much implied there's a lot she's got. She didn't say specifically what it was, so it leaves everybody hanging. The other thing is, and I could be missed this part, but does she have a defense attorney? She's been in jail for a month, so she's got to be represented by the defense counsel. And what's their play on all this? What's their, as I said earlier, their alternate theory? So there's a lot that can be gleaned from more interviews with all of these parties. But you have the parents or the grandparent saying, she's fine. Teenagers are, they're addicted to the social media. And that's almost our norm in our society now, whether it's right or wrong.
All right. Big thanks to Dr. Janie Lacey. Mike is going to stick around. Still to come, who else could have done it?
People are assuming her guilt, and she's innocent until proven guilty.
A woman's remains found scattered throughout a 3-mile area.
Now, a former naval officer stands trial accused of killing his wife.
The Dismembered Wife murder trial. Live coverage weekdays, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law.
This is terrible. Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
The Matriarch Mastermind murder trial, August 19th, only on Court TV.
Mountains of evidence has gotten us through here today. Lots of processing, lots of working with our law enforcement partners to get us to where we are today, that honed in on her as a suspect.
People are assuming her guilt, and she's innocent until proven guilty. And there are people that are assuming that she's guilty and making comments online that are totally uncalled for.
When covering a case like this, where we're talking about a murder taking place inside a home, to me it's important to get down there to see the neighborhood to see where this house was, to get a better understanding for what the crime scene was like. Cody Thomas did just that and took a walk around the neighborhood where this murder took place.
We're out here now in small town Carrollton, Georgia, where the home where these crimes occurred took place. Now, if you look down this street, this is Tyus Carrollton Road out here. You see it's not that busy of a street, but it is kind of a main freeway. Now, what you don't see on this street, you see these wooden poles, but what you don't see are security cameras on these poles, which leads us back to that question. If Sarah Grace Patrick, the teenager who lived in this home, did not commit these murders, then who did? And if they did, they would have had to have some kind of getaway plan down this street. And if they did, no cameras would have picked them up unless you see the neighbor's house. There's one here over my shoulder. There's a neighbor right here across the street. There's a neighbor across over there on those acres of land. Unless they had some sort of Ring doorbell footage, some Ring camera surveillance, or any kind of home security surveillance, that is the only footage that would have picked up anyone leaving that February night. Now, back to the neighbors. They're sitting here. You see, this is not your traditional neighborhood. These houses are spread apart. They're across the street. They're acres apart. We do know multiple shots were shot in the house that night. Who could have heard those shots? And they were shot around 1:30, 1:40 in the morning. So if these neighbors were in a deep sleep, they may not have heard those shots unless, again, they have Ring camera footage that could have picked up the sound of those gunshots in this house where the crimes occurred. But again, this is out here in Carrollton, Georgia, where everything went down. Sarah Grace Patrick now facing double murder charges in those two shootings.
All right, Cody's look at the neighborhood brings us to the next question in our investigation. And Cody brought this up. Who else could have done it? Who else could have done it? Here to help with our investigation, Rick King and Mike Gould. All right, guys, I want you to take a look at this. We have some drone footage to give you a better idea of what this neighborhood is like. Let's take a look at that drone footage that we shot so you can kind of see how far back the house is set. You see the long driveway getting in there. Now we go on top, giving you just an idea of you're in rural. It's not completely rural. I mean, there's a lot of people who live in this area, but things are spread apart, as you can see from some of our aerial footage. So, Rick, I'll start with you on this question. Who else could have done it here? Where else should they be looking? Where else do you think they did look?
So I think that what the lieutenant said earlier and what that's been the kind of commentary all night has been about, they got to start looking in the digital evidence, because that's going to tell you where I think this case is eventually going to go. Who she talked to, who talked to her, who the parents were talking to, because there was some sort of information. I think the grandfather said something about he used to be affiliated with the motorcycle gang, and maybe it was something to do with that. But all that's going to come out of, again, digital forensic evidence from his phone, or phone from the mom, or phones from Sarah Grace. So somewhere in there will be the answer. Right now, it's anybody's guess.
All right, let's take a listen to Sarah's grandfather speaking with Cody about this very question.
I say that the police have a number of suspects. They have one in particular that I can't go into detail, but I know that they have, they have looked at this person, and I hope that their investigation turns up something positive. I'm going to still stand behind Sarah's innocence.
All right, Mike, what do you read into that? Obviously, he's the father of the victim, right? It was his daughter who was shot, so they're feeding him some information, but he's also the grandfather of the suspect. So how much information do you think he's getting, and do you think the investigation continues?
Absolutely. I think it has to continue because, again, they called 911. Did she have gunshot residue on her hand, as he said earlier? So he mentioned the fact that it was a 9mm weapon. He said that. So where's the gunshot residue? The police responded right away, I'm assuming. There's a lot that we don't know. And that's the fact. Did she have a boyfriend? Did she tell her boyfriend that she was being abused? Now this point about outlaw biker gang, or biker gang for that matter. So again, I'm just surprised how definite the spokesperson for the police department is coming out so strong and confident without offering any theory. A motive isn't necessary, obviously, but we'd like to have people need a little bit more.
And in most cases, we get
this is months.
Yeah, in most cases, there's a little bit of information that comes out, right? There's either a press conference or there's some way to communicate that so-and-so was arrested, and we know a little bit about it. That has not happened here, but this may be the reason why. Take a listen to the spokesperson for law enforcement talking about this issue. That obviously was not it. Do we have it? Here we go. Take a look.
We have processed digital evidence, forensic evidence, DNA evidence, everything that we can to try to make a case and hold the right person accountable. We believe there absolutely positively could be other individuals involved, and we have been speaking with Sarah over the past couple of days and hoping to shed more light on that aspect of this crime.
Okay, so that's interesting. So the defense. How about that, Rick? How about that? It seems like Sarah was speaking at some point as well. What does that tell you?
So the defense lawyer in me says, and therein lies the problem. Says Sarah should have had a lawyer is the first thing. However, that being said, I think what's interesting to me is she talked about DNA evidence, and I don't know unless there's somebody on some strange DNA in the house, because you'd expect. I mean, clearly you'd expect Sarah's DNA to be there. You're going to expect the families to be there, but maybe there's someone on the outside and they've linked that, and that forensically somehow ties with Sarah. And it's hard. Right now, we're all speculating because we just don't know. They're just not giving us enough.
Yeah. Mike, how about the fact that the suspect, the defendant now, was cooperating to some extent?
Right, and that's been what we heard. I don't know why she's not why isn't there a defense attorney advocating for her publicly, coming out and saying this is just a bunch of hogwash? I think that there's going to be some kind of co-conspirator in this. I mean, I can only infer from what the spokesperson said that it's absolutely, positively, maybe someone else involved. So it sounded strong, but at the end it was a maybe. So I think we're going to find that there was someone else involved. As I said, maybe an ex-boyfriend, maybe a friend, and for reasons God knows what a 16-year-old would concoct in their head for social media purposes, I don't know. And I'm not saying she's not involved. I'm just saying there's a long way from suspicion to beyond a reasonable doubt.
That is it. Yeah, we know that is a long, long road. All right, Rick King, great to see you. Thank you. Mike Gould, always a pleasure. Now, not a ton of evidence has been made public yet. We've been talking about it all night, but prosecutors say they have the goods to prove that Sarah Patrick is a cold-blooded teen killer. But some are wondering if the evidence is actually there. If it's not, prosecutors will likely need to show the jury a motive if they don't have the evidence to get the conviction. But I'm still left with this question. Why would she do it? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.